Finance Committee of January 27th, 2016 to order. This meeting is being recorded for television replay. If anyone in the audience is audio or videotaping, they need to acknowledge it at this time. Carol Mitchell is it. Excuse members, I had a communication from Karen Meehan that she would not be able to attend this evening, and Andy Roth has had some more conflict issues with our Wednesday night meeting, so he's excused as well. Approval of minutes of reserve fund transfers. I assume none.
None, sure.
Approval of minutes of previous meetings, January 13th, 2016. Do I have a motion to approve? Those are the ones we commented on last week, and Carol made the corrections and resent them out.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Oh, okay. What do we do? What about the meeting minutes of January 20th? They came the other day. Have people had a chance to read those?
Yes,
Have a motion to approve?
motion, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Opposed?
I believe I wasn't there at that meeting.
That's last week. You were there.
Was last week? Was it the
you
week
were there.
before? No?
Well,
Okay.
that's all right. You want to abstain?
Aye.
Okay. All right, special town meeting warrant article review. The first is Article 1, which is community preservation funds for Jackson Field, which Mr. Donahue and Barry Johnson. Am I supposed to take one of these and pass it on?
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, and Tom, good evening, and thank you very much for having us tonight. And the first article before you is asking for a sum of $675,000 for the purpose of engineering services, reconstruction, and resurfacing of the existing track located behind the Peebles School. I want to tell you that there will be, for this article and possibly others, some other presenters, as well as some other people that might want to be speaking on the articles to address the committee. So this article and the motion would call for the funds to be expended under the direction of Mr. Donahue, who is the Director of Business Services of the department, school department, excuse me, and the CPC. So with that background, and then I'll pick in when Mr. Donahue is finished.
Okay, thank you. This has been a project we've been looking at for the last couple of years. Last year, we did go to the CPC, and we did get funding for a study of, or analysis of the track. We hired Gale Associates to come down, survey the conditions of the track, make recommendations of which the best way to go forward with, resurfacing the track and repairing the track. I did send around some pictures of the current condition of the track. The track was last resurfaced in the early 90s, was when the last time it was. And the life of a track is 20 to 25 years, so it is about the end of its life. It has been, in the last few years, in pretty bad shape, getting worse. We think especially last winter really did a number on the track. But you can see the pictures I sent, give everybody copies of. You can see the current condition of the track. It's really not suitable, as the athletic director would say, probably have any events down there anymore because there's so many areas where the track is deteriorated. You can see the first picture where it's just coming right up off the surface. So at this point, we are, obviously requesting funds to resurface the track. The process would be to remove the existing surface, remove the first layer of asphalt that's down on the track, and then put down another layer of asphalt, and then put the new track surface. Also something will be added to it will be a fence around the track, which you don't have today. Put a 4-foot fence around the whole perimeter of the track to keep people off the track, more spectators during events and whatever, football games. Also, there'd be some work done on the long jump area and triple jump areas, and the high jump areas haven't been probably, maintained, for years. Those areas would also be refurbished. The timing of this going before one of this special town meeting is a very short window to us to go out the bid for this project, to make it so it'll be accomplished this summer. We'd have to go out the bid, assuming it hopefully it's approved by everybody. We'd go out the bid right after that. We have engaged Gale Associates to get this bid documents together. We'd probably go out the bid in early March with, bids due back in April, with a proposed construction date of late May, early June. Because if we do this, there's like a 3-week curing period when they have to put the new asphalt down before they can do anything. It's like 3 or 4 weeks of just waiting for the asphalt to cure, and then they would continue with the project after that. Looking for a completion date, probably, early fall, probably like September, it should be completed by, so it wouldn't have any effect on the football season. If it did, the athletic director's already, we could have road games in the beginning, all right, we'll address that. This also probably would mean we'd have to have an indoor graduation. Graduation's first Saturday in June. We've already talked about it at the high school. If we do go forward with this project, we just schedule graduation indoors so it wouldn't disrupt the project. So it is a large project. I mean, it is a lot of money to do this. I think the track is used by not just track team, all 3 schools that are down there, all the gym classes, PE classes go down there, plus a lot of community members go down to walk the track or run the track. It really is a community, facility. It's used quite a bit. Probably getting less use now because, based on the conditions of the track. That would be pretty much all I have. Do you have any questions on the process or what we plan?
Anyone have any questions?
How is this surface put down? Is it poured on, or is it laid down like a carpet, or what happens?
It's a pour, it's a multi-surface, like a latex type surface. They brought it to one of, we had meetings with Gale Associates to the committee. I think they do, it's like a 2-step process that then they come and then they stripe it. Then there'll be when they will stripe it. There is some maintenance involved. I think after 7 to 10 years, you have them come out and do just put another surface on or just sort of touch it up and then ready to restripe it. It's probably about a 1/2 inch thick latex type surface, which is what I would say. It's different than the current surface. I think it's a little thicker, maybe a little more durable than the current surface that we have on the track.
George?
You said that there's an intermediate maintenance occurrence around.
There is
7 to
something,
10
they say every 7 to 10 years, you should have somebody come out and just check the track, fill in any crack areas that may be coming, there may be any cracks that may be coming through, to have those addressed, don't wait too long. And then I think this track has been repainted, the track, at one time in the last 20 years, I think at one point, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they did have to paint the stripes on again. That's something you might have to do, obviously, again, to the fade.
And then as far as, that's the useful life. We've reached that on the other
Reached
track
the life.
anyway, so
Right.
it's time to move on it. But you said you referred to last winter being particularly harsh. Was that just the straw that broke the camel's back, or would that?
It has been, it's been issues with it, but if I talk to the person in the picture, my grounds person, he's there all the time. He said it's really, after last winter, it got a lot worse. There are some places you can see in some picture where we have patched it in the past, probably in the last 5 or 10 years, there's some patches you'll see there, but they obviously aren't even, doing anything. There's other areas in the pictures, I think, show where there's some settling of the water pools. I think in the last couple of pictures might show that. You see it's dark, that's where the water is pooling. It's just really, the last couple of years, it's really just rapidly deteriorated, I'd say, in the last couple of seasons.
Seems like a lot of money, but it's also a 1/4 mile at the minimum. But that, everything is outside of the track and outside of it. In other words, the pits for the, or is this
The
gonna?
pits are inside. If you look at, I think there is the second page, it shows the track itself, the surface. It'll show the area. So the pits are inside, they'd be like behind the goalpost either end is where those are. If you're looking at the
okay,
drawing,
all right, yeah.
it'll be behind the goalpost either end is where the field events are. There are other field events areas which are which are installed by Mass Maritime, which we use for shot put, whatever, and discus, that are on the other field, which would be the old baseball field behind the middle school. We do field events there also.
Thank you.
Mary Jane?
Yes, Judy?
I just want to say, I think you should do this as fast as possible. I
Right.
think, but I am also amazed at the price. Not that that means anything, because I don't know anything about the prices of these kinds of things, but it did seem,
Yeah, I was pretty surprised myself, when we came, to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
didn't realize a track is,
just lay it down, go home, you know?
yeah, you think there's not much to it, but it is, the other reason, there's very few contracts that do this, so that's why we want to get out the bid and make sure we are in the pipeline to get it completed, next summer.
And then I think we should promise ourselves that we'll take care of it and do the interim stuff,
Right, I think we have to make sure we do I agree with that.
right? Right.
MJ?
Yes.
Will Gail give you potential bidders on this? And secondly, with spending this kind of money, will somebody actually oversee it independent of the guy that's putting it
Gail
in?
Sochius will. Gail Sochius is like our owner's project manager, like on a construction. There is part of the contract we have with them, there's site visits, they're gonna oversee the project. Because obviously, I'm not an expert at installing tracks, so they will be overseeing it as each phase of it and making sure the contractor is doing the right thing. So they will prepare the documents, we'll go out to public bid, like we've done, like we do numerous times a year. We get all the bids, and we'll review those probably with Gail, and then we'd make a recommendation for the award. I don't know, that'd be a question after, but I guess, I don't know who would be the award, generally it'd be the school committee, be the awarding authority. I don't know if it would be the CPC committee,
Yeah,
that's another question.
probably
So we'll
us.
discuss that after, but the fine tuning of that, then I'd make a recommendation to the awarding authority of which, contract we award it to, based on
Thanks.
the bids.
Jerry, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, Don Ellis, I'm one of the selectmen, but I'm speaking as an individual.
Okay, can you come up to the microphone, so?
Thank you. This track is used on a daily basis by many people, myself included. I got a long way to go, believe me. But I've made inquiries because of a pretty good reason. I've discussed this with many premier runners that run on the Cape, and my daughter happens to be a premier runner. I'm kind of bragging about that. In the 80s, when she was in high school, she held many, many records. She still runs today, and she's in Virginia and runs for a team in Virginia right now, even though she's married and goes on. I had her look at this track with some friends, and they were absolutely appalled at the condition of the track. So I would hope that the Finance Committee would look favorably on this, because we have an excellent track. We have an excellent track and field team in the high school. They should be helped as much as possible. You have some very dedicated people who go out for track and field. It's not football and it's not baseball. It's a sport that actually is run as individuals. And I think we owe it to all of the citizens to have a track that's in first-class condition. And I would respectfully request that you look at it in a favorable manner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the track? Is there any kind of warranty with this, do you know, Ed?
I think that maybe, let me step up. I'd have to confirm that with Gail. I think maybe some warranty on the track surface initially. As far as I could look into that.
I was just-
Gail, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I was just curious. And,
Yeah.
I do know that from the work that the Capital Outlay Committee has done on roads and asphalt and how much it costs to do a mile of roadway, I can certainly understand the cost, especially with
Okay.
the special treatment that has to happen. So,
It's good to know.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
A couple more comments. if I
Okay.
might. First of all, we want to acknowledge and thank very much the assistance of John Nelson, our Facilities Director, and George Sala, DPW, and also wearing the Recreation Committee hat. The Recreation Committee, I understand, and George could speak to it, has endorsed the project. The Board of Selectmen the other night, I believe, voted to endorse the project. And I know that there are various and sundry committees of the school
The
department.
school committee is obviously.
School
the
is
facilities
also
committee,
behind it.
yeah.
So, and also, just one last thing, is the CPC committee. And when they presented this to us, for all the reasons that you've heard, we unanimously also voted to support it and recommend it to you. How we intend to fund this, the article will be requested to borrow this particular amount of money. And it would be borrowed under Chapter 44, Section 7, paren 25, which allows for the borrowing of outdoor recreational activities, et cetera. So that debt service, Linda worked us up a debt schedule for, you can borrow in this particular type of project for up to 15 years. So whether we decide to do that based on the bids and everything else, that will all be decided down the road. But that's how the motion would read.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Looks like a very good project.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, Article 2. Here, are you going to address Article 2? Which is, this is the request to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 54, Section 16A.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm wearing the hat as the town clerk. And I'm the one that requested this article to be placed in the special, and I appreciated Tom and the Board of Selectmen for accommodating this. As you know, we have already started our very busy upcoming election season, this total calendar year, et cetera. So I have, under Chapter 54, I think it is Section 12, the Board of Selectmen are charged with annually appointing the election workers, from warden, clerks. They call them inspectors, but we call them checkers, et cetera. And so I usually present a list, and the board and Tom review it, and then they are appointed. Now, under this particular chapter and section that I'm asking the town to accept, it has happened extremely rarely, I want to say that. But this is more towards a protection, where in the worst time for an election for a town clerk, believe it or not, is 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning on election day. Because when the phone rings, we know we have a problem. It's never any good. It could be the machine, they can't start it. There could be a myriad of things. But it can also be that one of the important people who are to report and be at the polls and work the polls, for whatever reason, it could be illness, it could be whatever, cannot work that particular day. So if the town accepts this section, under this, I would be able to appoint someone to that vacancy that day, as opposed to me calling Tom at 6 in the morning and saying, what do I do? I need 3 selectmen, or can you help me out? Which is, like I said, really. So this very, very busy season coming up, I just thought that the town and myself needed this help and this protection. That's all it is.
Any questions for Barry about the accepting this? Seems pretty reasonable. Yeah. A good thing, Tony. It's kind of like accepting the emergency's postponement of a special town meeting.
That's
You had to
another
do that one too.
Careful, MJ.
whole problem.
Okay, Article 3, open space, Aptucxet walkway and trail.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from this particular item. Having been elected a trustee of the Historical Society last Saturday, it would be a conflict of interest for me to participate in this.
Okay. Barry, are you speaking to this one also?
Okay. Now, I know it's kind of funny, but now I'm wearing the hat as the chairman of the Open Space Committee. And the reason for this is that we have requested that this be in this special town meeting, is again to try and meet this spring's construction schedule. What this is, and the article would accomplish, is to ask the town to accept an easement from the Bourne Historical Society, Inc., to the town of Bourne, and it would be negotiated in the best interests of the town as deemed by Tom and the Board of Selectmen, et cetera. And that would allow us to be able to, the easement would be for a 30-foot walkway, which would be constructed, if you're familiar, and I think all of you are, with the Aptucxet campus. And if you go right in behind the pirate, or the ship that Skip Barlow made, approximately in that area, there will be a trail that'll be up through that current woodland. And it'll enter and end right at the Lions property, which we bought, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And it, it's directly on the canal. So the purpose of this is trying to merge the two campuses. So people could walk easily, and an open space committee envisions possibly putting another gazebo on the Lions property, like we have at the 3 Mile Island, like we have down the street here. It would be a scenic vista, that type of thing for people to have access to. But at the same time, they could enjoy the Aptucxet Trading Post facilities. So to us, it just is a great idea. We're just trying to get the best and the benefit out of both properties. So in order to start the process, that's why we need the easement. Then when we come to the 2017, CPA projects, you will see a sum of money to actually create the walkway. And that envisions the same materials, same everything that you see on Main Street. It's not asphalted. It's some kind of a crushed stone or whatever. George can say better than me. But also, it'll also be ADA compliant, et cetera, et cetera. And again, this is where George and John come into the picture to help us out in connection with the folks from the society, namely Skip and Teddy Ellis and Dick Anderson.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of this. It just makes sense, and we'd like to get it done as soon as possible.
Any questions for Barry about
Yeah,
this?
I just have one. When it says on terms and conditions deemed to be by the selectmen in the best interest of the town, does that mean you're talking about money, or what are you talking about?
No, that's the actual language of the easement.
Oh, okay,
The actual deed, there will be a deed passed back and forth.
all right,
et
but,
cetera.
so it's just the access then?
Yeah,
It's not-
that's all. Right.
It's
It
not
allows
money,
us-
it's not
Not, the money will come in for May
for May.
to construct the actual
Construct,
walkway.
yes,
Mhm.
okay,
All this does is, the society retains the property, but it gives us an easement
An
to
easement, all right.
pass and repass.
okay, great.
Do you need the easement in order to make a proposal for the walkway? I mean, in order to ask for the money? I mean, is there a reason that it's separated out in two
Well, we
steps?
weren't sure exactly how much it would take to do that yet, and actually, even though there is a small rough cut, we want to be sure that that is really, get through the winter, be able to see where it actually should be laid out, but it would be within a 30-foot width, and we think approximately where it is. It's going to be obviously towards the canal service road end. And actually, the total goal, from our point of view, which I really haven't discussed with the society, is that we would love to see possible total loop, so that people could go from the Lions into where the Painted Ladies windmill is, and just walk the entire property. That would be a grand scheme. But again, we're taking one step at a time. And by getting the easement, we would be allowed to spend CPA money on the property,
Right.
on the project.
Gary, did you have, or did, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, for the record, Don Ellis, one of the selectmen. I'm here as an individual. However, the Board of Selectmen did vote to approve this article. One of the things that, if I can give you a historic background of it and why it may be more important to some than others, is that the Lions property was the only piece of property on the south side of the canal that was ever zoned B1. And B1 is the most intensive zoning that you can have in town. So as soon as the town took that, it took it right out of the B1 zoning, so we didn't have to worry about having a oil landing platform out there in the canal, which it was originally designed for before 1938. So as Barry has stated, this is to create an access between the Lions property and the historic land of Aptucxet. So it can be ADA compliance, and there's a parking lot that'll go on the Lions property because there's a limited parking at the Aptucxet Trading Post. One of the reasons that this happens is because the Corps of Engineers now has taken it upon itself to deny access in many, many places on the canal. And the Lions property had access for more than 80 years by a walkway that went to the canal. And recently, the real estate section of the Corps came down and cut off all these access points. But the Historic Society has an access point that they have recently gotten put on a map, and it's perfectly okay. So it's a must if we want to use the Lions property, which everybody owns in the town. And by placing this easement, you can go in and park at the Lions property, go over to the property next door, which belongs to the Historic Society, and that then will give you free access to the canal so you can walk, bike, do whatever you want to do. I think it's a very valid issue. It will work very well. The Historic Society voted unanimously to support this, and I think it's cooperation between all the different groups. And as we all know, the canal is one of the best places to go and walk and have a good time in the world. So I think this is an excellent use of open space. Thank you.
You always have good background. Any other questions? Brian?
Real quick, is this path from the Aptucxet place gonna come out to the canal, or is it gonna come out to this house,
To the Lions
to
property.
the Lions
It'll
property?
be right along the,
And then
abut
from
the
the
service
Lions
road.
property, can I get to the canal?
From where?
From the Lions property,
No.
can I get to the canal?
At this point, we're still gonna talk to the Corps, but that was actually, prior to that, there were some steps that were put in by private landowners that actually the Corps of Engineers removed. And the access actually, and they closed that off, and actually, like Jerry said, there was actually a small path from the service road about that wide, one person at a time. And so, they wanted to put a rock or whatever right there. So that was part of the impetus of this, but we had always envisioned this happening when we asked, and town agreed to buy the Lions property. And we want to make this the best scenic vista that we possibly can, but also to provide some shelter and people to be able to come up and just sit down and relax and just enjoy the whole area.
Any other questions about Article 3? Okay, thank you very much. Next article is Article 4, to restore and preserve the Civil War Soldiers and Sailors Monument.
I'd just like to say, and to start this, the impetus behind all of this project that was presented was Dick Conron, who has just come up to join us here. If you will recall, a few years back, we actually did look at the War Memorial that is located right in front of Town Hall, and which people have served in the American Civil War from 1861 to 1865. The names are actually on a plaque around the War Memorial. It was constructed, I believe, in 1914, when the Town Hall was actually constructed in 1914. We tried it. Actually, Jerry Ellis, speak to him as a friend now, was chairman of the Historic Commission at the time. He and Selectman Roland DuPont actually came to the CPC, and we appropriated, I believe, $60,000. And to try and do exactly what Dick has proposed and has taken up the mantle for this. Unfortunately, the people that Jerry had lined up, et cetera, couldn't do the project for various and sundry reasons. One of it, I believe, was a death involved. So the project kind of languished for a little while, and then we returned the funds to the Community Preservation Fund. So Mr. Conron came to me as the chair, as the original contact, and then we had a meeting, and again with John Nelson, George Sala, et cetera, and Jerry, and the Historic Commission, and I'm gonna let Dick talk about everything he's done. And again, he came to the CPC, and we'll talk about that, but we are unanimously recommending this project. So, Dick?
Okay, thanks, Barry. Just to give you some background, I was on the CPC when this original project was proposed. So I've always had it in the back of my mind. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I like to do memorials. So I was down in front of Town Hall back in, I don't know, September, I guess, and happened to walk over to the memorial and saw what bad condition it was. So I Said, well, you know what? Let's see if we can find some companies that do this stuff. Well, I found 3 companies that do it, restorations, one in Massachusetts, one in New York, and one in Connecticut. And so I approached the Historical Commission, and the president there is Judy Reardon, who's a neighbor of mine, and said, would you be interested in re-sponsoring this program and this restoration effort? And the Historic Commission voted yes, and working with Barry, then I had to go to the veterans, the memorial trustees here for the building, who was also in charge of the restoration. And I was able to work with John Nelson as well. He's the one that's gonna really, shepherd this whole thing through in terms of specifications and engineering and things like that. So, back in the fall, I had 3 separate site visits by 3 of the different companies and asked them for some ballpark estimates on this thing. And the biggest cost in doing this is the labor. This is a town-owned memorial, so we have to pay prevailing wage, which is significantly higher than if this was a private endeavor or something like that, okay? So all the bids came in approximately about the same. They weren't bids, they were really letters of, I said, give me a ballpark figure, and they ran anywhere from $275 to $375 in terms of restoration. The big challenge with this is the monument's intact, but the steps all around it are severely damaged. They're faux granite steps. They're poured concrete that look like granite, but they're all cracked and chipped and separated. So and they don't know what the foundation is underneath. So as they redo this, that's going to be the challenge here. So that's why we needed which why we put in approximately $350,000 to do this. We have to have a pretty significant contingency fund. It's going to be bid. We have Coastal Engineering. I'm working with John, like I said, working with John Nelson on this. Coastal Engineering is going to do the specs. They're from Orleans. Once we get the specs done, we'll put it out to bid, and hopefully one of these 3 companies will be interested in moving forward. It's a tricky restoration. Let me give you a perfect example. I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of it. The actual letterings on the monument are beveled inside. They're not just straight cast letterings. So they're going to have to pull off all the old letterings and really mold. One of the companies I spoke with actually said that they have enough lettering left there to actually reproduce the ones that were stolen. So if they need 3 Cs, they got a C somewhere. So they're going to take it all off, remold it, and recast all the bronze stuff, and then put it back in. So it's a challenging project. I think it's a good project for the town. I think it adds value to the town, just like the track project does. And I wanted something to do this winter.
George, you have a question?
Yeah, it's certainly a worthy project. Falls under the, the classic definition of what the CPC is supposed to be doing. But anyway, I had you mentioned that you're going to look to restore. I guess my question is, are they going to restore with as many of the materials that are there right now? These are all
Right.
Original, the foundation?
Everything
You
there is
said faux
original,
granite.
right? It was built in 1914.
Yeah.
Has never been touched. It's been severely vandalized. All the stars have been chipped off it. We are not going to put the phony granite in. We're going to put in real granite steps, okay?
With
We're not
more
gonna-
integrity.
Right.
Yeah, basically.
Because the monument itself and the first layer of stone around it are granite stone. And the people I've spoken with say they can match it, and that shouldn't be a problem at all. Plus, we're also looking at replacing all the curbing around. We have to put in a handicap access there. We're gonna pull out all the blacktop and put in stone walkways there as well. So, been pretty interesting and exciting type of project to work on,
The other question, just a point of interest. Is it known if the names that are on the monument, and I think there's maybe about 40 names, maybe more, but if they're, the Civil War actually predated the founding of the town of Bourne. I was wondering if these are all people who were living in what is now the town of Bourne, or were these possibly Sandwich residents?
I'm going to pass that on to
Jerry Ellis?
the man who put the H in historical.
Maybe that's a yes or no, Jerry, so you can keep this quick. But, I was just interested.
Want me to come up?
I'll repeat what you say, how's that?
Yeah.
There are 69 names on there, and that was before we separated naturally. It was made up from West Sandwich, which we were. And of those 69 names, there were approximately 55 of them actually were from the town of Bourne after the separation. So the 69 names are still valid to go on there, because at the time of the Civil War, and redundant, that's who served, and they're all in local cemeteries here locally. So it's very accurate. I've checked them, and I've gone through the other cemeteries in the town here, and there's only maybe one that could be added, but I think the 69 is perfect.
So Jerry says that there are 69 names, and it was before the separation from Sandwich, and this was West Sandwich at the
Yeah.
time. And there are 55 of those names that he can definitely verify that were from the town of Bourne, so that's really excellent.
Great.
That's
Just
really great.
interested, yeah.
I was gonna ask a question of, is there anything that would help preserve it more than the 100 years that it's already been? So that's just a kind of a question for the future, but it has lasted it's been 100 years.
Well, they're going to, like, one of the firms I spoke with said, the lettering was literally just cemented in. The holes were drilled and they were filled with concrete. So they're going to use epoxy of some kind that will, keep everything in there, so.
Awesome.
Been pretty impressive, the three companies I talked to. Had a lot of experience.
Any questions for Dick about this?
A couple more comments, MJ.
Okay.
Please.
Yep.
The goal is to possibly try, the outline for this is July 4th. Dick, I guess is the earliest.
The earliest will be July 4th. Realistically, two of the three companies I spoke with say you probably need to shoot for Veterans Day in November, just because of all the unknowns. They do not know when they start to take this apart to redo it, what they're gonna run into.
So that's kind of the goals that we've set for ourselves.
Okay.
And,
That's nice.
Again, Dick did all the homework on that. Secondly, you'll see the three entities are sponsoring the article. Again, I understand the Board of Selectmen has unanimously voted to support it also. And when Dick came before the CPC, we were absolutely thrilled that he was willing to take up the mantle and did all of this homework. And again, we unanimously voted to support it. How we're gonna fund it, this motion, we are recommending to take it out of the FY16 undesignated fund balance. That's where this will come from.
So it won't be borrowing, it'll be just.
No, there'll be no
Okay.
borrow, no. We are recommending the undesignated fund balance. And again, it's in this particular warrant because A, we want to move on as quickly as possible, and B, to make this spring construction schedule.
Okay.
We've already met with the engineering firm that's gonna do the specs. They're confident that if we get the approval in February, we should be able to put this out to bid in March and have it, awarded hopefully by the end of March, and they'll be able to start the work.
So it's like the track, we're trying to get the good construction weather. Right. Jerry, did you have more that you wanted to comment?
Again, Donald Ellis.
You better come up now to the mic, so this is more than a quick answer.
I'll just be very brief for George. Again, for the record, Donald Ellis, Selectman, speaking as an individual. We did, as a Board of Selectmen, voted unanimously to support this, and I'm extremely pleased to back Richard up on anything and all. I was very disappointed I wasn't able to complete my task on that, but when he picked up the mantle, I knew it was in good hands. And so politics makes strange bedfellows, and I just feel very strongly with Richard can handle this and take it to a very good conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. I seem to recall that we had started looking into this sometime in the last 10 years that I've been on Capitol, and I'm not sure that I don't know if that's probably not the same time that you're referring to, but,
7 years ago, I think it was.
oh, well, that's right about,
Right.
350.
that would be right about the time that I was
Yeah,
getting on Capitol.
that's when we
Yeah.
discovered.
And so it's good to hear that it's going forward, because it was,
The
Worthwhile
most
project.
telling thing is, and I think Richard made it to the committee, is it's almost like on our website and every picture of Town Hall, what do you see first? The memorial. And that is almost, you go back and look at it, and I guess those of us that go there every day, it just kind of blends in, but it is so important to the community that we're very pleased to be able to pick this up.
There is, Madam Chairman, there's a absolute duplicate of this memorial at West Point. It's done by the same firm. And so anytime you have anything that's dedicated to veterans like this, I admire Richard going forward, and all of us really appreciate that are veterans.
thank you.
One last point, and we want to be sure to thank Linda for all of her help to the committee in guiding us in the best way to fund these particular projects. So, with that, I'd say thank you very much.
Do we have, can we get, maybe for next week before we vote, just kind of the status of the community preservation fund so that we have the finances on that?
What would you like to know?
I really, no. Yeah, I mean, the fund balances. If there's a document
Yeah, yeah.
that you can
It's
email to
what-
me that I can forward to the committee so that we are just,
I can tell you.
okay.
Excuse me, I apologize. The current fund balance in fiscal year 16, right now, is $1,420,828.69. That's where the 350 will come from.
Is that the undesignated fund balance? And are the other fund balances you generally spend down in the year so that, like, for the historic and for the open space, they're
Right.
not usually carryovers, it's only the undesignated that
Okay,
has
I
a
can tell you
carryover?
that too. And again, it's, thank you to Linda for providing everything. The open space recreation, right now, our balance in 216, that's available for appropriation is 425, 122.69. In the historic resources, because all of the projects have been spent down, is 69 cents. It gets better. In the community housing, again, because of all of their funds have been allocated, 22 cents. And then there is undesignated fund balance, because other CPA purposes was how we're funding the field project behind the middle school. And then after you do all that, you come right down to the bottom line. It's $1,420,828.69 for appropriation throughout the fund.
And that, the 350,000 will come out of that, so that'll reduce
The
that.
bottom line. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Good job.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is Article 10.
You're not doing the zoning
Article 10?
articles?
He's not spending.
I'm not doing the zoning articles till next week, because the
Okay.
planning board's not,
Oh, okay.
the
Oh,
planning
this is gonna
board,
be a short meeting then.
yeah, the planning board's not meeting on those until the 28th.
That's fine,
So
that's
that's why
fine.
we're
We were
meeting
just-
next Monday.
I had asked Jerry to hang around just in case you needed some information on one of them, but that's fine.
Okay.
Good, thanks, Jerry, for offering.
Okay, Article 10, capital the ambulance. Do you want to explain this, or? Do you want me to explain it?
No, we're in the rotation of buying the larger ambulances, and we currently have one that's up for replacement, and that was going to be up for replacement at the annual town meeting. There will be some changes in in the regulations on the ambulances that could cost us more if we order this after June 30th, after July 1, as well as The current ambulance is costing us repair money on a weekly basis. There's been an awful lot of hours put into that particular ambulance. It's a 2009, is it the 09 or the 07?
This is the 09, and it's,
E450.
right, so we have two ambulances that are the same that have been on the
Right.
schedule. One, the 2007, is already been ordered to be replaced.
Correct.
And then the 2009, which is the very same type of ambulance, is 2 years later, but they both have about 130,000 miles on them.
The-
But the one that's 2007, we've put like $28,000 in parts and 500 man-hours in repairing it. And the one that we have now, we're only at 12,000 in parts and
Yeah.
200 and something hours of man-hours. But you know, if we wait on it, we're gonna be spending 28,000 in parts and 500 hours of man. So it just made sense because we needed to replace it anyway to move it forward and just, let's not.
The Board of Selectmen voted by majority to replace this at this town meeting. This will be a diesel machine. It's an international body, I believe, as I recall, international motor and chassis, which we expect to get 10 to 12 years out of, as opposed to the current 4 to 6 years that we're getting out of.
6 to 8, we were
Well,
trying to
ex-
stretch
except
it
for
to
when we-
8, but.
But by stretching it, we've been paying a lot of money to keep them in. And this will be a diesel as opposed to a gas engine, which is certainly a lot, will last a lot longer. They're machines that are easier for our guys to work on too, which is important. It'll take the hours down as they work on them. And it just makes sense for us to do this now, 90 days, get it ordered 90 days earlier. We'll get it in
It takes 8
stock.
months. It takes 8 months because they're all like custom.
That 90 days earlier, and the other one can get off the road as soon as possible.
Anything to add, John?
Pardon me?
Did you have anything to add?
No, I just think the Capital Outlay Committee was 100% behind this. I think we drew the analogy of your roof is leaking and you don't repair it for a couple of years, and by not repairing it, then the house, things within the house get damaged, so it's, and also, even if we didn't get it in time, we'd be grandfathered, I guess, with the
Right.
regs, so
Yeah.
I think it,
Yeah, as long as it had been ordered prior to
right,
June
right,
30th.
right.
But
So I think we were well in favor of it, saw the logic behind it.
Okay, any other questions about the ambulance? Okay, and then Article 11, the FY16 budget amendment. Mr. Greeno?
yeah, we have a handout for you as well.
Is this it?
No, it's changed.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, it is changed
Yes.
quite a bit.
Thank you, sir.
Huh?
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I note that Linda is in the process of working on various transfers from line items and within the budget that we can do this with, so not everything is a free cash type of expenditure. As an example, the $115,000 in the ambulance salary line, if you recall, going back a few months when the selectmen determined that we would not be doing the dispatch. The original thought was to reduce the money from the dispatch, the county dispatch line. That was gonna be part of the cuts in the override reductions, because they were gonna take over the dispatch.
There's a reduction in expenses.
Correct. But it was a reduction in expense because it was gonna be taken over by staff, by our staff. It was going to be a payroll item. So when they decided not to do that, we reduced the line item to make the cuts at the October town meeting match what we needed to do. The Board of Selectmen discussed that we would transfer $115,000 from that. Am I correct in what I'm saying here so far? Because I think I am, into the salary line. Correct.
So this is a transfer from the ambulance fund to the salary
Correct.
line, but you're paying the county to,
Out of the county dispatch line.
You reduce the salaries in anticipation of the override passing.
Correct.
And therefore, in conjunction with that, assume that we would be moving dispatch to the county. Dispatch isn't going to the county.
No,
so
incorrect.
the
Other way
salary
around.
back in?
Because
Other way
dispatch is
around.
going to stay with the county.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
dispatch is gonna
Yeah.
stay, so we
Right.
have to increase our salary.
Right.
Correct.
Because
Right.
we
It's going
decreased
back,
it in anticipation of
Correct.
it going away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this was part of the discussion when we talked about the SAFER grant as well.
Right. So that's an example. The town administrator's salaries and wages, that is to keep one of the administrative secretaries through at least the end of the year. That will come out of monies that were originally appropriated for the HR coordinator's position. That is not going to be filled at this time.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
To the administrator. Is that's restoring a position that was cut?
That is restoring a position that was cut through the end of the fiscal year, yes, sir. But
the salaries and wages, there's a particular need for that, is there
There-
not?
there
To
is.
cover for, yes.
yes, we have one of the administrative staff that's going out on a long-term absence, which would only leave one person in the Selectman Town Administrator's office, where there used to be 3.5, and now there's 2.5. But we need to cover that person. This will be a 15-hour-a-week position through the end of June.
Madam Chair, back to the
Yes.
administrator. That term of, is it a 5-week due to an operation?
We expect
Absence?
that this is I'm not going to get into we expect that it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks. The selectmen have already approved the utilization of some wage money that they had to carry them through part of this, and this is to carry it through the end of the fiscal year.
So, am I correct in saying that originally in the fall, there was in the budget $52,230 for administrative support in the town administrator's office to take over some of the human resource functions? That position has not been hired, and instead of keeping that $52,230 position, you are augmenting the you are putting 15 hours into the administrative,
No.
no.
There was $52,000 left in the HR department salary for a coordinator's position.
Okay,
That was to be moved into the town administrator's line at this town meeting, okay? To get it out of the HR
okay.
department. The selectmen already voted at their directive to carry this position through the end of the fiscal year.
The town administrator's salaries and wages.
Correct.
Which is an administrative salary. It's in the town administrator's department, but it's an administrative salary
It's an
position.
administrative support position.
Okay,
And is this person, excuse me, Chair, to the
Yes.
administrator? Now, the cuts were effective January 1st, correct?
Correct.
Has that person been working since January 1st?
Correct. The selectmen voted to keep that person on through
Town meeting?
March or so. Well, she's going out through February, through the town meeting. And then the selectmen have also authorized to keep this position through at least the end of the fiscal year.
But how was she, if that position was funded and there was no money for it, where was that money
The
come?
selectmen authorized the use of $6,000, which we had for other wage, if we hired somebody in to utilize that money from January through the town meeting, and this will carry the person from the town meeting through the end of June.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that's $7,916 for administrative support salaries in the town administrator's office.
Correct.
Okay. School department expenses, $139,916.
The superintendent is here, but certainly, there was, the school department looked through in the school committee, through the reductions that needed to be made based on the override, felt that in the work that they did, that they had made as much of the reductions as they could without really further affecting educational and support for the students within the school department. The school superintendent, myself, the chairman of the school committee, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen have met on several occasions. And this is a number that I think the school department feels is adequate. I don't want to say it's sufficient, but adequate to carry the school department through the end of the fiscal year and take care of some of those more intrusive reductions that were going to have to be made if they had to move that additional $139,000. I will note that this $139,000, and we concur, will carry into the next fiscal year in the budget for next year. Whatever increases, that's the base from where we start. So, Steve, I don't know if I've missed anything, but
It would be helpful, I think, if you come up and talk. One other thing, I want to step back a bit, because I think that in the initial discussions that we had about some of these amendments to the budget, one of the things that happened after the special town meeting is that, as we heard from Donna, the assessor, that the new growth estimate for this fiscal year was $351,000 more than what we had anticipated. So that was additional revenue that was not included in our estimates for revenue when we made reductions at the special town meeting. So that, in one of the things that had been discussed is, could we go back and look at some of the reductions if we had additional revenue, and without impacting the free cash in terms of our policy, were there some budget adjustments that could be done? And I think when you're looking at these budget adjustments, that you have to kind of look at them in the sense of that we have $351,000 of additional revenue that we could look at to offset some of the really crucial needs that were impacted in the special town meeting.
fine.
I think it's an important point.
Yeah.
I do.
I think that.
Because other people say, well, what did we need an override for then? You know, if we're gonna put all this money back in.
Well,
Where
we're
did we
still,
get this
we're
money?
still cutting a lot of money.
We're still
We're
way
still
down.
having a lot of cuts.
understand that, they don't understand it unless you
Right.
tell
Frame
them
it
we
in the
found
fact
this
that,
money.
well,
Well,
The money
it was
found
part
us.
of it was money that was certified after the special town meeting, and so it
Right.
became available in FY16. Superintendent, could you explain some of the process that the school committee went through in terms of the reductions that they did make, and then what reductions?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Finance Committee. I appreciate both points. Mr. Guarino's point that we did look to try to see, what was important and prioritized for us as a district, knowing that we still had to make reductions. And the other point, too, that we still had to make reductions, as you had said, Madam Chair, this isn't a restorative process where we're looking to restore the entire $480,779 that was voted on as a reduction at the fall town meeting. So what you have in front of you is you have a single sheet of paper which first indicates in the top if there was a failed override. And these items have had very little adjustments to them as far as titles or as items. Maybe a little of adjustment in some of the values. But you have the failed override reduction. You now have a total value of 1 through 15. You're going to be looking at the sheet in an inverse manner. If there are extra sheets, if people want to grab them, they.
Oh, sorry.
There are audience members here. You'll notice that I've placed purple on this sheet because I'm a very proud purple person from Bourne Public Schools. But you'll look at this in inverse order. You'll look at the reductions, numbers 1 through 15, as a priority lists, meaning the ones that we determined as a school committee, as an administrative team, that we would identify as reductions moving forward for cost savings or reductions are prioritized. And then it's the exact opposite order from 16 to 21. 16 is the largest priority looking at a restorative budget. So going back to the original reduction, you have numbers 1 through 15. You have a unique one in there called 15A. I didn't want to change that to a different number because that is what has been presented to school committee starting in October through November. And then there was a vote by the school committee at their December school committee meeting for a reduction of $315,863. So far, the Bourne Public School Committee has voted to reduce our budget by $315,863. Keep in mind the town had voted to reduce our budget by $487,779. So there is a variance there, a balance there.
$480,779.
Right. So looking at our needs, looking at what the Madam Chair had said about some access to possibly some revenue, but more importantly, looking at what our needs are as a district, as a school community administrative team, and if there was any restorative action or restorative process to our budget during this current fiscal year, what would that look like? How would we prioritize that? In prioritizing that, we would evaluate if there were any emerging needs. Some of the emerging needs that we've had is we do have students with significant needs that may move into our district during a school year, and that happened this year, and so we are adding an additional educational support personnel, which is ESP, on there, and that's the value of that individual for the remainder of this fiscal year. That is not the value of the individual for an entire fiscal year. So that's why that is a number one priority in the restorative budget, is what we're titling this process. We had heard loud and clear, and on the next two items, through many facets, many mediums, that our district is not alone with the rest of the Cape, that we need to address the health and wellness of our students. You'll hear it often referred to as the opiate issues that are out there. But the good news is Bourne Public Schools has a comprehensive health and wellness education curriculum and program. We've been lucky enough to see this on the horizon, and we had recommended a health teacher at the elementary level for this current fiscal year, and it was part of the original reduction process. As well as the guidance council, we saw that as a need emerging at the middle school level and had hired that position for this fiscal year. Through school committee and through public comment, we had heard that we really shouldn't be letting these two positions go. As a matter of fact, we met with Barnstable County and Cape Cod Health to review some of the programs that are out there for preventative services around teaching students around opiate addiction. They were thoroughly impressed with Bourne Public Schools and said that we are uncommon compared to others, that we have an investment in health and wellness within our district, and they applauded us for that. So we see those as priorities continuing in this process, and they're emerging needs that need to be addressed by us as a district, but us as a community. So we see the values in continuing those positions in this fiscal year in the restorative budget process. The next item is a circuit breaker liaison. The way that this is explained to me is it's somebody who maintains a $2 million budget for us. We have, like every community, we have a number of students that have to attend specialized schools outside of Bourne Public Schools. They have significant needs that we as a public school system cannot address. Some of those needs are first of all, that's our responsibility as a district and as a community. That's number one. Number two, we can't match these because some of these programs are very unique and very individualized and can cost upward between $200,000 and $300,000 per student. So we always set aside this consulting position of $20,000 for somebody to manage just that account for us, to monitor the expenditures in a $2 million account. We believe it has paid itself over and over and over again, time and time again. Again, looking at a $480,000 reduction, knowing that we would have to get deeper into personnel, this was on the original list, but we think that it's at this point in time, it's prudent for us to keep that in a restorative budget process moving forward. In addition, we have made some reductions in our supply lines, but we still believe, due to our budgeting process around supply lines, we have a per pupil expenditure value for all of our schools and supply lines. They're based off of the number of students within a school. We believe that that has been the right way to budget, but we believe that that's a very conservative way to budget. Our budget for supply lines is roughly around $300,000 per fiscal year. That's on a $20 million budget. So we think that it's already conservative, so we believe that there needs to be some restoration to that line as well. We had originally recommended reducing fuel for bus, but also parent transportation for students with special needs. We support parents who want to transport their own children. We know that the gas prices are still down. There may still be some cost savings in this area, but we have still chosen to restore this if we can at this point in time. Then the last one is the legal expense. We had recommended a reduction in our legal expense. We have two current collective bargaining agreements that are set to kick off for negotiations, which is a labor legal expense for us moving forward. I can assure you that we will continue to look at this with a fine pen. I can also inform you that to date, this fiscal year, starting July 1st, we've spent roughly $9,000 on legal expenses as a school district. So it's not something that we are overexpending, but it's something that we enter in collective bargaining agreements, looking at how tight our budgets are and how important money and language is and within any collective bargaining agreement. And negotiating in good faith with great units, we just think it's appropriate to leave that funding in a restorative process at this point in time. So that's my recommendation to, it was my recommendation to school committee, to Mr. Greeno, the chair of the selectmen, and it's my recommendation this evening to the finance committee for a restorative budget to the Bourne Public Schools at the special town meeting in a value of $139,916. And if that is successful, I would recommend that the school committee vote to reduce our budget, the variance between $315 and $340, as part of the process for the $487.79 that was originally voted. I'm open for any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
You said something about students coming from out of district. Is that special needs?
We have students that move in during the year, during any school year. There are particular students that if they move in, if they're placed out of district, the more costly programs, the district who financially budget for them are responsible for that for that fiscal year. But if we have a student that moves into district that has significant needs that were educated within that public school, we're responsible for educating. So if the student comes and has related services or specialized transportation, we are responsible for that cost. We can't recoup that cost from the district in which they came from.
Okay, but if he goes to an outside facility, say, then you can recoup the cost.
For this fiscal year. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's subject, excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Subject to the appropriation at the state legislature. The circuit breaker is money that is appropriated by the legislature, and they don't do the same amount every single year. So one is always on tenterhooks as to how much money you actually would be getting. And it's particularly difficult when you have a student move into you after your budgeting year is in place and the town meeting is taking place, and they're unfunded, and you are required to fund them that position because it was not budgeted, and it can really be. I know. I had a $350,000 one time, so I understand that very well.
Are there any other questions for the superintendent about this? I'm just curious, I don't have my full budget with me. Just with the legal expense, you said you've already expended $9,000 this year. Do you know what the total legal budget was for the schools?
The total school committee budget, which I have in front of me, I don't have it broken down. I could look it up in the interim. For school committee is, I think it was $50,000 we budgeted for the district for the year,
For the school committee,
for school committee legal expenses.
for legal, okay.
Yep.
And so this would reduce that down to like 40,000?
Correct.
Okay. This is a comment. I was talking to my granddaughter who's in second grade in California, and we asked her this weekend like what her favorite subject was, and she said health. I said, what do you learn? And she said, oh, all about the body. It's really interesting. So I think it's good
It's
to
a
tap
shame that-
into. I mean, I think it's interesting to children, so I think it's
It's
good.
a shame that most school districts, because of curriculum frameworks and et cetera, that they've reduced those health and wellness programs.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there's no other questions, nothing from the audience, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in and giving us this detail.
Welcome.
Very helpful. Okay. Next item is snow and ice expenses, $150,000.
That's to build the snow and ice expense, step it up from the $92,000. We will step it up again in the next fiscal year to bring it up to approximately $350,000 to $400,000 to get to about where we have been spending over the historic period of the last 7 or 8 years. As I've indicated to the Finance Committee earlier this year, the price of salt and sand, salt particularly, our first order exceeded the $92,000 budget. We'd always kept it, and with the concurrence of the Finance Committee and the Selectmen, at a low number, so it's the only budget that we could adjust. But the last couple of years, as you know, have hit us particularly hard. So the Selectmen have made the determination, with discussions with George and myself, to start, and the Finance Committee, to start to step that up to somewhere close to an average of what we are spending a year. This last particular storm, without materials, just labor and contractors, was about $45,000, and this wasn't a particularly evil storm. But it was, it was pretty much cleaned up in, 36 hours completely with the sidewalks and everything? Yeah. So this is just a step up. It'll go up an additional amount in the next fiscal year as well, to try to step that up to where we can be close to what we hope. Another winter like last winter, the year before, will still be coming back, either for a reserve fund transfer or a supplemental appropriation or a transfer at the end of the
We
year.
have also increased we're also working on increasing the Finance Committee's reserve fund, so that'll help.
That has been in my particular budget that will be coming over to you, unless the selectmen make a change to it. It will bring it up to what the proposed policy, 0.5% of the, and it's about $290,000
Right.
plus or minus.
So that gives a little bit of cushion too in the reserve fund, so we can sort of take a multi-year process in getting the snow and ice. When we get the money back from, FEMA for storms, does that go to the general
General fund.
fund and then to be appropriated later? So
And that will be about, if it comes in, and it's expected to come in, it's been approved. Michelle Freeman and Charlie Noyce have worked very hard to keep, they're like our go-to people on these storms. It's approximately $130,000 on about $180,000 that was, $189,000, excuse me, that was expended on that storm last winter. So it's, it's a year behind, and we haven't got it yet, but we do have approval for it to come in.
You still haven't got it, Tom?
No,
Oh, it's-
we've just recently received
We
the
got it.
approval. It did come in? Okay. When did it come in? Okay, well,
Don't look at your mail, Tom.
You didn't get the memo, I
I didn't get the memo, okay. I got the memo that it was approved and it was
deposited.
coming, okay.
It's in your mail stack.
It's in the mail, all right, thank you. So it has come in.
But the end result is it took almost a year to get.
That's not unusual. Nemo, it took, some of the reimbursements on Nemo from a couple of years ago, it took over 2 years on some of that.
Longer, this is
Yeah.
actually pretty good.
This is good.
Sandy?
Yeah,
That's sad.
This was,
Michelle?
Yeah, just one question. In the event we have a mild winter and don't use 100% of our 350 to 400,000.
That would be next year.
It has to roll into snow and ice the following year.
No, it goes to
No.
free cash.
It can go to free cash.
It's reappropriated every year.
It's just that you can't decrease that amount.
Once you get it up,
Once you get it to a
once we
number,
get
right.
up to 242,000, it's gonna be the minimum
stuck
of
there. We're stuck there,
242,000.
Which is why we always left
You're-
it so low.
That's right, that was the
Which,
strategy.
in other words, that's gonna replace the 90,000, which was the way it was always done.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll be up to, with 92,000 and 150,000, we'll be at 242,000, which gets us actually pretty close to our average. When
But
you,
we're about
once you
a hun-
put in the money that we got back. So
Yeah.
when you put in the money that got back into the average, it's, we're
Yeah.
getting pretty close.
The community building expense is what we have estimated to open this building is close to after the town meeting, if it's appropriated, 5 days again,
So it'll be open Mondays, excuse me.
maybe. Yes, it will be open Mondays, and
you.
the finance
Thank
committee can start meeting again on Monday evenings here.
I had to miss my
What
book club.
we're hoping to see happen is not that all of the programs necessarily fall back to the schedule that they were on. Some of them will. But we have a very tight schedule that's utilizing the building, I think, very well. There are some things that, could be made easier for some of the folks that use them. But it is my hope that both the Recreation Department and the Council on Aging will utilize this as an opportunity to start expanding some additional programs while they've been able to do this. So that's what the hope is, to be able to, Chris Ann and Felice, and John, myself, have worked really hard to make sure 97% of the programs were accommodated. Some folks didn't like the times and things like that, or the room that they're in. But some of that will ease back a little bit, but it's really hope that they can look at this as an opportunity to expand some services, because the board has also directed that this be carried into the next fiscal year as well, which will be somewhere around $50,000 to bring that in. So that's where we are with that. The Council on Aging.
Can I
Oh, I'm
just, before
sorry.
you move on, there are some programs that were not like recreation programs or council on aging programs.
Right.
That were just general community use programs, Girl Scouts or other, other programs, and so the times that, those daytime hours, Friday at 3:00 or whatever, those are gonna be open, or should
Right,
be
and
open now?
Well, it should be, but what we've also done on a couple of programs where there may not have been a room in this building, we have provided rooms in other of the town buildings to accommodate the time that they need. There is a support group that met here during one afternoon, once a month. That wasn't available to them, but they are meeting in the lower level of the town hall, in the meeting room down there. There's some groups that were meeting here in the evening that are now utilizing the Sagamore Fire Station meeting room. So it's been a good thing in some ways to utilize some of the other facilities that we have as well. Whether they want to come back, we'll certainly make all the effort to have that happen, but the real intent, as I've said twice now, is to see if we can expand some programming as well.
It'd be nice to have some community outreach too, to see what kind of programs
Yep.
people would like to have and how they envision the community center for the community.
So, that's.
Any other questions on the community building? Anyone?
Now, on the Council on Aging salary and wages, that is primarily to restore the bus driver's salary till the end of the year. Now, I do note, and I've mentioned, that we have commitments. We've received 1,000, but we have a commitment for another $9,000 for continuing senior bus transportation. So,
That's nice.
the salary, it is nice. The salary for this person over the 6-month period is about $25,584, call it $26,000 for rounding off purposes. We're appropriating $22,000, which leaves a shortfall of about $4,000. I'm roughing numbers. But we also took all of the expense money out of the budget in the reductions that dealt with the senior transportation pieces. So there were monthly trips of $1,350. Some of the printing of the schedules and the posters, about $150. Gasoline, because we're still under the same bid for gasoline right now. Then we're out, I'll get to that in a minute, of $7,000, tires at $1,000, and parts at about $500 to $750. So the easy, not scientific way is to divide that by 2 to get through the half a year. And that brings to about $5,750, added to the about $4,000 shortfall, and there roughly is your $10,000 in
Thousand that you got
donation.
from donations.
It's really not just the salary, it's all of the things that go along with keeping the bus up and running and filling the tank and doing the trips
So
and all
you
of
use
the
the donations towards the expense lines and you use the,
And the salary line if we have to, because it's still a little bit short.
okay,
Madam Chair,
yes.
to the administrator. We seem to find enough money to do a lot of things. And I think, quite honestly, and we had this discussion before, that to go out and talk to people and beg for money, when in fact you're moving money all over the place here, and you're asking someone in the community, and I also, to do this, and I also understand that, in fact, one of the persons is a company that is a contract with the town of Bourne. Is Covanta?
Covanta is a contractor with the town,
Yes. And you went to them for money?
absolutely,
Then they have a contract with us, is that ethical?
yes. They
Not
are a
term or
customer
legal.
of ours. They are a multinational corporation, and I had no problems with going to see them and asking them if they, as we do a number of companies in town, to see if they could see fit to, because they have a charitable arm, just like the banks that we do business with have charitable arms that we also have called to.
Wouldn't it be cleaner to pay it with our own money and have them return that money to them, or they could donate that if they wanted to do something else? Other than this, when you could have done this, and you seem to be finding money left and
Well,
right.
if
To
I
do
c-
things, let me finish.
Certainly.
You have a habit of interrupting people.
Goodness gracious.
So I think, Mr. Administrator, that I hope, from my perspective, and I'm representing the community at whole, that it would have been more appropriate for you have to take and work the money out of what we have here. We seem to be able to find it left and right. And coming back at this point and thanking them with gratitude for the offer to do something, but in fact, turning it back, because it should be coming from the money that you have sitting here, and you seem to be keep finding. I personally find it inappropriate, and I think that it was wrong, and I do think it's unethical to do what you did. That's my personal opinion, and I will hold to that. And I would hope in the future that we would not have to have this conversation again.
Madam Chairman, if I could, are you concluded now, sir?
At this point, yes.
Thank you. At the time that we did this, I had discussed this with my chairman and other members too. We were not aware that we would be coming back at this time. It was right after the override failed, and there was a large cry to keep the senior bus up and running. And we did not at the time envision this type of appropriation coming forward at all. So in the time that this was done, it was appropriate. I still think it is appropriate. I have no qualms about doing the work that I did to try to keep a service running that we didn't think was going to be running at the time. And I am not finding money, sir. If some of this were up to me, we would not be adding to the budget at this point in time in a number of areas. There has been a directive by my bosses that these are important issues that we need to fund. It is my job to find the way to make that happen. I am doing that, but I would not expressly add another nickel to this budget. We were told by the townspeople in September, and then again at the special town meeting, to reduce and live within our means. So I have no problems going out and soliciting funds for a program that there was a large outcry from the senior population, and at the time, this was an appropriate avenue for us to pursue, and I would do it again.
Well, I just would,
I-
Madam Chairman, we did have a conversation about this in November, following the town meeting. And there was discussion then about finding the money to support the schools, the library, et cetera. And one of the things that I had a personal discussion in your office with was about funding this driving position. And you said then that at that point, you were in the middle of the process of talking to various organizations and businesses to do that. At the time, I believe I did say to you, I didn't think that was the right thing to do, that we had the money to do that, and I gave you the figures and we looked at all of them. So I'm just coming back to say I still hold to that position from that discussion that we had in your office in
And
November.
I appreciate that opinion.
Could I just say something? I don't think that what the town administrator did was unethical. I think that's a pretty bad charge. I think you should be very careful about that. I mean, you may think that way, but I don't. I was thrilled when he told us about the money that he got from the companies, and I thought it was a wonderful thing to do. I had never thought of it, actually, so I thought it was great. But I don't, you know,
Madam Chair.
Actually, I think that the question that's being raised, there were two different contributions that was made. One is a business that is in the community that is not in a contractual relationship with the town, and so I think that and made a really nice gesture of contributing. I can see that soliciting funds from someone that we have a contractual relationship. I'm not necessarily unethical is how I would characterize it. And I hadn't really thought about it, but it's his opinion, and so.
right, but I'm saying that's not my opinion.
Okay.
And I think it's important that we get both sides here.
Yeah.
That it's a opinion.
Okay,
not a-
I think we've had an opinion expressed, and we've had,
Right, and let's
the
move on.
reasons for it, and another opinion expressed, and so I think that's good on that subject. So currently, the Council on Aging salaries and wages is being funded by the budget, and the replenishment of expenses is being funded by contributions to the town
And part of the salary,
and part of the salary,
Yes.
so,
about almost $4,000 of the salary.
okay. The next item is library salaries and wages and library expenses. If you can explain what these particular things are and what they will do for the library operation, that would be helpful.
Yeah. In broad terms, in speaking with Patrick on this, the library, when we made those reductions, sometimes we make some, you're looking at numbers, and the impacts were much greater than we expected them to be at the library. They took a very severe hit on the initial piece. So in my discussions with Patrick and his work with his trustees, the expenses are really to keep memberships up with clams, do some other things to help the books and the subscriptions and all of the things they need to do to keep
What's the expenses?
on the expense line. The salary line is really to keep a lot of the part-timer people being able to come in so that he has a staff where he's not down to 2 people in the library, and if one calls in sick, they have to shut the place down. It's really a minimal staffing to keep some of the programs that they have going and keep their casuals, if you will, able to come in and do a lot of the part-time work that he depends on. This is still a 3 to 4% reduction in his overall budget if you extrapolate that out to the full year. And he's still having some reductions, certainly in personnel, and then also in some of the programs are not going to be restored as well.
Doesn't this get him back to accreditation now?
Yeah, well, close. It will certainly help. I don't think this brings him back up to 50 hours. That's my understanding. My understanding is it remains still at 45 hours. But then there's a prorata on the certification. We were lucky this year. The certification came through prior to the town meeting.
The original budget.
Right. So it would be next, FY '17. This gets us really close, and we may be able to get a waiver, or it may be a minimal reduction or sanction, if you will, when it comes to the state aid.
When we're looking at the fiscal year 17 budget, one of the things that I would like to see as we review the budget, and I'm not sure who's doing library, but is what would we need to fund in order to keep it with the 50 hours? I mean, there's not just one thing, there's 50 hours and a certain amount of spending on expenses
Right.
and library materials. So when we evaluate the budget, I'm going to want to see myself anyway, what are we funding in the proposed budget, and what would we need to fund in order to maintain that certification? And
Yes.
just so we know where we
Yeah,
stand.
we were right at the cusp when the budget was funded, quote-unquote, fully.
Right.
We're proposing in the next year to restore, carry this 35 to the full year at
Right.
70. It still results in about, on today's dollars, in today's budget, about a $32,000 reduction. Then if you add salaries, it'd probably be closer to 40 when you're all said and done. But that is a good discussion to have with Patrick. He certainly will be much more detailed in being able to respond to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about the library expenses?
The Recreation Department expense of $4,400 is very simply to start the lifeguard program up at two beaches, and we have to get it going early. Can't just hire July 1, we have the hiring to do
We need
it.
to have a certain amount of expenses in this
Right.
year's budget
And,
in order to have lifeguards.
That will,
And the Board of Selectmen indicated that that was a priority for to keep. for
it
them to
was,
keep.
yes, that and the community building were both priorities of the selectmen and the meeting a week ago this past Tuesday.
Any questions about the lifeguard expense?
It is our intent to, again, offer the two beaches. There will not be an expansion, and there will be a swimming program, swimming lesson program, which we were planning to have with or without the lifeguards, but it will be also there. It'll still be a fee for service type thing, but
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Also, isn't that, within that money, or is it the planning for the next year that there would be the scholarship for those that couldn't?
right, we have some money in there for scholarships. If we have enough to carry the staff, then children that can't afford will certainly, no child is ever turned away from programs. That is something that Chris Ann and I, over the years, have made sure that happens. No child is turned away for lack of funds. That's
Thank you.
50, I'm sorry.
Insurances?
We have an estimate of what our insurances are going to be when we end up signing the contract for the year. The audits will come in, some on workers' comp. We may add some new vehicles. We may, even though we take vehicles off the road, the new vehicles have, those types of things. So our insurances are upside down by about $55,000, non-health insurance, general insurances.
Is there a breakdown of where it is? Like what's workman's comp or what's,
No, it's more building, it's not workman's comp.
Yeah,
Oh,
buil-
it is workman's comp, I agree with that. It's workman's comp, building.
General liability,
auto,
yeah.
It's a lot of workman's comp.
yeah, I thought the impression it was mostly in workman's comp. Okay, so that, So so 432,000 has been voted by the Board of Selectmen, correct, at their meeting on the 19th, right? That was their vote for this article, 432,232.
After they, well, it was 409 and some change, and then they added the
So they
Right.
voted they
Correct.
voted 3 votes, 409 plus the 18,000.
18 plus the 4,400,
so
yes.
432,
Correct.
232. So you want to explain the next pieces of, that are in here?
Well, the 52, we're taking away, I discussed that earlier. We're going to try to mesh that into some of these line items here to try to reduce the overall free cash. 115,000, I explained a little bit earlier relative to the dispatch issues and what happened with the SAFER grant. The DNR salary and wages are, it's adjusted down. He lost a staff person as a result, and that goes through a number of different Linda gyrations with the,
When we did the original
right.
adjustment in October, I didn't take the money from him. So in other words, I funded that position, but that person has actually been cut. So it's actually reducing the amount we're gonna take from waterways.
We didn't have, can we move on, or? Okay.
Reducing the amount that we took from waterways, are we taking a different amount from waterways, or are we reducing the budget by 17,993?
I'm gonna reduce the amount we took from waterways. And from those two budgets, so part of it's in the benefits and part of it's in the salary.
So, so this position that was cut was actually funded in the budget in the fall. At the fall special town meeting, the budget was funded with that amount of money.
It was in the original reductions, and it just,
So what is the reduction in the budget?
17,993.
What is the total reduction of the position? 17?
well, that's for the half year.
That's a-
So it's a
About
$35,000
$35,000.
position. Okay, so it'll be reducing the budget and reducing the amount from waterways, right? Okay,
Unemployment, we had added quite a bit to unemployment in anticipation of more layoffs than what actually ended up occurring. Some people, there were a lot of bumps that happened. We expected some people not to take the layoff, or to take the layoff and not bump, and many of the people bumped, so we can adjust that. I don't want to say up, down, correct?
Taking out and putting it back into.
Back into, right.
you're putting it into group
Group
insurance,
insurance.
into the health insurance?
Yes.
Do you think the health insurance is
It's
more-
trending a little higher than anticipated right now. Not hugely, but some.
That 125,000 for the unemployment expenses is what reduced the overall budget reduction from the 879,000 to the 754,000, right?
Mhm.
So, okay. Total. We have the, information, that was given to the Board of Selectmen on the free cash situation that was made as part of that public presentation to the Board of Selectmen at their meeting on free cash, so the Finance Committee could see what the free cash situation is currently and how it's playing out with these reductions? Get my dates straight. It was the presentation that you made with the long-term projection and the free cash analysis. The Board of Selectmen on the 9th or 10th of, I think it was the meeting. the
We can
12th.
get that information to you, yes.
I think it would be helpful for the Finance Committee to have the full picture. I mean, we're looking at these reductions and not really having the information that, when you look at what the Board of Selectmen looked at with the free cash, was that with the free cash certified at 3.5 million, then we added back $1 million, this is rounded numbers, $1 million at the special town meeting from budget reductions. It brought our free cash up to 4.5 million. So, there's $300,000 of miscellaneous additional revenue that's been added, and then you have the budget reductions, which still leaves a good amount of, still leaves us with close to $2 million over, in excess free cash, and then you have other money from the sale of Cody or other things that you're thinking that are gonna happen this year. So I think we have to see that whole picture
Right, and
to understand why we're saying, you know, we need to look at both revenues and expenses to have a total picture of what's going on.
one of the things that, when you see that, and we will go through it with you in the same detail, we have made some assumptions as we bring this budget forward that things are going to happen, okay? That, you know, we are quite comfortable that Cody is going to happen in our conversations with the owners and what they've been doing with DHCD and getting ready for the closing. We don't expect that to fall apart. That's certainly something, but, you know, that's an anticipation in our budget. It is a forecast. So yes, certainly you can have that whole presentation. And as the chair is well aware, we are bound with the new policies to only utilize
One half of the
one
excess
half of
free
the excess
cash,
free cash.
which in the presentation that was made to the Board of Selectmen, there was about $1 million. $1 million of excess free cash that would be able to be applied to the fiscal year 17 budget under the current policy.
Which is about half of what we utilized when we went into last year's budget.
Right. So this spreadsheet that we have here, you have budget amendments, original of $432,232. Then you have $240,000 of additional increases from the fire department salaries and the unemployment, and the group insurance. But then you're minusing $195,225 from the budget, plus you're gonna transfer an additional amount, you're saying, from the ambulance fund? So, I would say that next Monday, when we meet to, talk about this, we need to see the changes in the waterways fund, the changes in the ambulance fund, the certified free cash, so that we see where the monies, and what actual transfers are what's happening, and
Yeah, we're
if you
working.
can get it to us beforehand, I think it would be
Yeah,
helpful.
and that's all being worked on by Linda for the motion for the article as well.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions about any of these expenses, or?
I guess the only thing that kind of was we heard that it was coming, and then we did see the excess in new growth. Was that an aberration? We're using 300,000 again. Do we think that, I know we can't spend it until we've got it certified, but does it look like we might be headed in that direction in FY17?
We're using 400,000.
400,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And
once you
that's-
get that 351,000 of new growth, it's added permanently to the tax levy and
Right.
is subject to the 2.5% increase.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so once we get that money, increases our tax levy that amount. So that means going forward, that's why new
Oh,
growth.
it's in the base then, yeah.
It's in the base, yes.
Yeah, right.
It increases your base and it
Okay, good.
becomes part of your
Okay.
2.5%.
And I just
so it
just
does.
wanna state on that 400,000, that was with the chief assessor kicking and screaming all the way into the budget with it. She's very conservative, and I think she should be in how we budget that, so. But that is that is something that we forecast, and then we're hoping that, we think it'll come true, but,
One thing that I really learned that I hadn't really understood before is that there's sort of progress billing, so that when it comes to June 30th, if you're 80%, because I was actually thinking of some houses that hadn't been completed or had occupancy permits that might be coming in this year, but probably they were somewhat completed and at least somewhat billed last year, so, but,
and then some that we expected to have, the permits were taken out, never started, so that's, one of the things you have to be careful of as well. And then there is progress.
well, I think it's really important though to track the permits, because you could really see, when you look at the history of the permits, money from revenue of permits, that we had one year where the permits were down to like 70,000 when they'd been trending at 130, 150. And so you have to be able to look at that. And I mean, it's something we have to look at and say, well, wait a minute, somewhere down the line, we're going to have a low year. And we had some low years, and then it started trending up again, but it's, it's not, exact. So.
And even when they're taken out, as I said, that doesn't necessarily mean, because they have 2 years to
Right.
get going.
But I think from my point of view, that the discussion around revenues and available funds as we look at expenses and whether we should spend the money or whether we shouldn't spend the money, taking that whole picture is really important, because we can't just look at the expenses. We need to look at the revenues and the money that we have on hand. Okay. All right, so if you can get us those final, what, where we'll be and what, so we'll make sure that we're all comfortable with these budget adjustments. Okay.
Excuse me. Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Jared?
I just had a question. This may be food for thought more than anything else, but you said that we had to lay out a lot of money to replenish us sand and salt.
What I said was our initial purchase of sand and salt, or sand, now you got me of salt,
Salt,
excuse me,
okay.
was in excess of the total budget for the year. It cost more than the $92,000, it was about $108,000 or whatever.
Right. I'm just wondering if there'd be any wisdom in trying to start not the fiscal, well, yeah, the winter off with a full inventory of that, regardless of what we used the prior year. In other words, and I guess my thinking is that whole snow removal budget is so unpredictable. At least it would lay, by April of every year, you at least have some idea of what that element of the snow removal, that is the snow removal.
We actually thought about filling the salt shed this year at the end of the season, because when they go out to bid again, the price comes up a little bit, but we were so upside down
Yeah.
that we didn't dare put another $110,000 into the snow and ice deficit for that year. We didn't think that, so when the bid came in August, is that about when it comes in, September?
Yeah, it comes in around that time.
Yeah. We ordered it
George.
immediately, so.
We need some expertise here.
Tom's dealing with it right. He's saying it right. The only other thing that you gotta understand is we're leaving the old building to the new building.
Yeah.
So the new building wasn't ready to be put in it at the end of last year,
Understand it, yeah, okay.
okay?
But just
Going forward, you're saying
if
is a
there's any-
strategy,
yeah, just
like what
something
is
to-
our,
Well, that would be a one-time, if you do it a one-time and you replenish, okay, and then we kick the fund up, assuming that we are close to that.
take a one-time stabilization purchase.
That's
to get it.
probably a good idea for 2,000 ton or something like that.
To get it to, I mean, because it's not gonna go bad, and it's there, and then you're not gonna be in a situation
Well,
like
no, once we
last
get the
year.
doors on the salt shed, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Right, but it would avoid having a huge,
And when you think about last year when you couldn't get it, I mean, it was like
Yeah.
waiting in line and you were limited to how much you could take, and, so then you're just
why it would be-
replenishing, you're always starting the season with
shed,
it, with
yeah.
full,
Yeah, and that's why even to this year, we started off with 15. We have another 5 that's going in. We're looking somewhere, you're gonna look somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000 ton salt a year. Okay. So,
What's the capacity of our salt shed?
3,000. But we can't fill that up completely to the 3,000 mark because we have to also, where we are now over in that water, the water district area, we have to now put the half and half inside. So half our shed is not, is being used for a 50-50 mix or a sand mixture,
Okay.
okay?
So we can, there's good, DPW snow removal liaisons can look into that.
I think he just did.
I know, I was thinking of that. When we get to see the new place, I've never seen it,
Oh, it's beautiful.
We're gonna have an open house in the spring.
but we're gonna get there ahead of
Trying
that.
to think outside the shed.
Yes, Brian?
Well done, well done.
That was bad, George.
Oh, wait a minute.
Brian?
From the financial end of this, if we were having a very good year, George, that's the time to buy some extra and put it away for a rainy day.
Could be.
Yeah.
We're kind of having a
Yeah.
tough year here, and maybe it's not the year to build up our inventory. You know what I'm saying?
They're so volatile anyway. I mean, that's, I don't want to get in, I mean, that's for another day.
It is
'cause
one of those.
He has some
I think it's-
capacity issues
There,
right
there are a
now.
couple things that I've been sort of mulling over that should be fall special town meeting issues that we address every year. One is OPEB. Do we have any money that we can put it, what should we be taking from, did we have excess revenue, excess, whatever, that we can put into OPEB? And addressing this, should we pre-buy any salt, or should we, how we should be doing that is something we could think as a fall special town meeting, it would fall right into that
Yeah.
time of doing it.
One of the, I'm sorry, Michelle.
So whether you think any of these things are good things or bad things to spend money on, we put a budget together that did not include these things. So are they sustainable going forward in FY17? Because we've heard loud and clear, don't spend the money. And despite all the puts and takes and where the money came from and how we got there, historically, we have not taken our anticipated free cash and anticipated new growth, et cetera, and applied it to the current year budget. We've been very conservative and held it for the next year. So I'm just concerned about how viable any of this is going forward. Unfortunately, I won't be here next week to vote on this, but if I was, I'd be voting against it, because I think it flies in the face of what we decided to do as a town when we voted at town meeting, whether the finance committee agreed with that at that point in time or not. And so I'm concerned about the viability of sustaining these changes going forward.
But I think that the money that we're spending is not anticipated new growth. It's already new growth that we got, and.
But we didn't know about it when we put the budgets together. So, from the perspective of where we were when we put the budget together, it was anticipated. It was new growth we didn't know about, so that's why I'm calling it anticipated. Even though it's real, we would have cared for it later in the process. So it just,
I think, though, one thing that's really different about what we're doing this year that we have not done in the past is that we are not spending any money below our free cash policy. And we have done that in the past. So what we're saying this year is we have a free cash policy, and we have $2 million in excess of our free cash policy. And we are planning so that with these budget adjustments and the budget that we're planning for FY17, that we will not spend an excess. We will stay within our policy and leave, at least half of the excess free cash going into next year, as opposed to prior years where last year we needed to get $1.5 million in order to get back to our policy. We're not going to be in that position this year because our policy doesn't allow us to do that anymore. And I think that to me is the biggest difference, because we were always trying to make up the difference that we'd already spent, and now instead we're saying we're not going to have to make up the difference we already spent, because we're not going to spend that. until, we're not gonna go below.
I think there's some semantics, but our certified free cash, when it came through, was not $2 million above policy.
It was 3 point,
It
right.
was 3.5, and policy would be about 2.4 to 2.6. So our free cash certification,
Right, but then we returned $1 million
Correct.
towards it, in order to keep it. So currently, we're at $4.5 million, which is,
correct, but we've always, yes, we have some semantics, because I have some differences on the new, how we use the new growth and things, but,
that's why I think we
Suffice
need
it
to
to-
see it. We need
Yeah.
to have the paper in front of us so we can see what's going on.
and that's what I said in my budget message, we don't spend money in a current fiscal year because we've had better than anticipated revenues in the current fiscal year. But again, we get into a semantical thing, and we should probably look at that and.
Right, because before, instead of spending revenue that we were getting, we were spending free cash below our policy. And
Once.
so, I think we did it more than once, but, we didn't really track it until this year, so. So it's kind of like, it's semantics.
Well,
And I think we're working through this. I mean, I think we have a new policy that we're working through, and I think we have new ways of looking at things and new questions that we're asking, and I think these are all part of the process of, being careful about what we do.
We felt that some of the reductions that were made, and that included into the school department, after discussions with the superintendent, and the library as an example, and the issue with the Council on Aging, wherever it comes from, needed to be, and the library needed some augmentation that we were able to do within the existing confines of what we have, notwithstanding the other discussions. The selectmen felt that there were other priorities that needed to be addressed. And that's a little bit of money, I mean, in the scope of what we're
Right.
talking about. It's, this fiscal year, it's $22,400. But they felt it important, so we have, followed the directives and put those in, and it's not going to have a big impact one way or the other. I think what we need to be careful with, and I think Dr. Town was correct, that we are, with the exception of some of the bigger items here, the school, the insurances, and those types of things, we are taking some money and putting our fingers in some dikes to keep some programs up and alive that are what we used to call nice to haves when we looked at the hierarchy of needs on municipal. And while we do that, we take away, we don't take a look at the infrastructure of the municipality that is in need of assistance, where we have these departments that are teetering. And it's good to keep the programs going. The citizens deserve programs. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But in some areas in the school department, in some areas in the municipal, and at the DPW, and other areas in town hall, we are not addressing those needs because they're harder to address. They're more expensive to address. And I think we have to be cognizant of the foundation of the building as well.
And I think that's why we're doing priority-based budgeting,
Yeah.
so that we can really have a good handle on those priorities.
I get concerned on that.
And therein lies my concern around what we're being faced with voting on at town meeting, and why I don't support it at this time. Not that I don't think any of these things don't have merits, and you can make a good case for most of them. it flies in the face of what we said we were doing just a few months ago.
You're talking about Article 11, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just wanted to be clear.
No, we're talking the budget article.
Yeah.
And
So you have some real misgivings about us putting these things back?
yes,
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
I do too.
and if we were going to approach it at all, I would have even considered voting each one as an individual item, so we get a better sense of whether or not the town supports it.
True.
And
Well, they can amend it on the floor.
Or they can amend it on the floor.
Yep.
But since I won't be here for town meeting either, I guess it doesn't matter what
They
I
won't be
think.
there.
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But, you know, this is a kind of a
Good
question
discussion.
it's actually come up in a lot of the discussions over the override in the budget process at the town meeting, that the control of the budget and voting for things that people want us to keep in the budget and not voting for things that they don't want us, you know, that they don't think we should, that we have a very, the way we do our budget motion is not conducive to making changes, and you know, it's so.
Yeah.
And it's, some that other people on the finance committee have talked about too. When we go through the budget and vote our recommendations, should we vote more specifically on things that we support or things that we don't support? So it is a question I think that we need to address, because I think it's sometimes hard to be all or nothing, yeah.
I thought the way that the budget, that article came about was the selectmen sort of gave their favorite things that they wanted back. I remember that meeting as I watched on TV. And I thought that bothered me a little bit, I guess. So-and-so wanted, you know, lifeguards, and so-and-so wanted this one, and, you know, because they were their favorite. It felt like, these are a few of my favorite things, is
Well,
what it felt like.
In all fairness to the Board of Selectmen, if I could, Madam Chairman,
Sure.
we came forward with a number of items that we felt needed to be addressed. The school department, the library, the Council on Aging. There were a number of areas that we felt that needed to be addressed.
I agree.
The selectmen, as is their role, found other items that they felt that needed to be addressed and voted to put those forward. So I think that that's the way the process is supposed to work, in as much as they have,
It's their budget.
it's their, once it's turned over, although they believed that some of the areas that were reduced and explained over the course of the override deliberations, perhaps could have been more clearly and succinctly stated, and felt that they probably would have opted to make some changes at that time as well. So the selectmen did exactly what they were supposed to do as a board.
Still, to me, it felt a little,
Well, I do think that they could work on voting their priorities as a board, having the board discussion on what are our priorities.
as their
And
favorite
then,
thing.
yeah, but all four, I mean, when they stated them, it was the votes for these priorities were 4-1, but having that discussion having that discussion earlier in the process rather than at the end of the process, I think would be helpful, but they're working on it, so I think it's, you know.
I had a question.
Yes, Brian?
Yeah. What I'm concerned with is, okay, we come to the town meeting next week, 2 weeks from now, whatever it is, and we present this article, we've got $470,000 of extra expenses that, gee, we just cut 5-6 months ago. And I can just envision somebody in the audience raising their hand, gee, where did you get this extra $500,000 to spend?
And that's why I think we need to have that,
And
where
we've gotta
that
be
money's
clear
coming
about
from.
that.
Where is the revenue? What is the free cash? What has changed and what revenue sources are using and what budget adjustments are we making?
And the timeline in which we knew everything.
Right.
I
And
think it's very
think-
important, or they're
I
never gonna
think that
believe
that's really
I mean, you're gonna
the
have
gist
kind
of
of
our
a vote there.
conversation next Monday.
And
so.
very, very quickly, because it's getting late, if I
Yeah.
could, some of these changes are further eliminations of a position that we had wanted to move forward, and we're transferring those monies into other
Right.
lines. Part of the 115,000 of this is a transfer from an existing area in the budget that would probably be used for more capital type items, but because of the way the SAFER grant went, and what the Board of Selectmen determined to do, so it's not all new money. It's really reducing some other things that we had planned to do, shifting some priorities in some of the areas that have money in them. And if you look at the overall piece of this, if you just take the $470,000, let's just use that now, it's about a 1%, it's a little less than 1% of an adjustment to a $60 million budget.
Oh, I know, but it's about half of what we cut 6 months ago, so. The other question that comes to my mind is, gee, some of these things, we never really changed the budget once we enact it. We enacted this a year ago, and at the time, I thought it was kind of funny. We had a snow and ice budget of 92,000. Everybody said, gee, that's what we've always had. Now, all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, we want to change that. Yeah, we've got a basis for it. We've had a budget way too small for the last 5 years. But do we ever get to change things in the middle of the year?
Sometimes we make the adjustments towards the end of the year. I mean, often we make adjustments in the fall, but often in the special town meeting, before the annual town meeting, we make budget adjustments. And some of these things, for example, the group insurance and the unemployment expenses and the snow and ice, normally I would say those are adjustments that we would make excuse me, at the special town meeting. We made those adjustments last year at the special town meeting. So I think we're just saying, well, we know what they are now, so we're gonna make them as part of this
Make them
budget
kind of
adjustment
ahead of
so
time,
that
you're
they're,
saying?
right. So we do make, it happens. I mean, there are gonna be budget adjustments every year because it happens. I mean, and there's always things that are unforeseen, both on the revenue and the expense side. So the fact that there are budget adjustments is not that surprising. I think that some of them we could probably wait to make until the special town meeting, and that's another discussion that we could maybe have, but, all right, so we'll consider this again next week. We'll look at the revenues and the sources of where it's gonna come from, and we'll give it a careful consideration in the meantime. There's a couple other things that I do, wanna talk about. I'm just gonna skip the votes on 8 and 9, we'll just vote those next week, we'll just do all the votes next week. Discussion and vote on the extension of the date for the FY17 budget to be delivered to the Finance Committee to February 17th, 2016. I was at the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, and the Board of Selectmen, by charter, is supposed to give the budget to the Finance Committee by February 1st. Since we are meeting next week on the fiscal year 16 budget, preparation for the special town meeting, and we are meeting for the special town meeting on the following Monday, and the following Monday is President's Day, and they are not quite ready to give us the budget. They don't feel that they're quite ready. It seemed to me that it would make sense that we would give them more time, and that we would get the final budget on the meeting of the 17th.
Sure.
And that they would have more time, and then we would, so, I just wanted to bring that to the committee to make sure
You're
that,
saying even if we got it, we wouldn't have time to work on it.
well, exactly. Well, you could look at it.
That's
And the
cool.
one thing that I did say is that some of the members of the Finance Committee were going to start doing department meetings, and so maybe if they wanted to have a preliminary budget for that purpose.
Right.
That if you wanted to get that, if you contact the town administrator and say, I'd like to get the budget before I go and meet with the library or the police or whatever, he can give you a preliminary budget, but just as long as you understand it's not the final budget and it won't be the final budget. But for discussion purposes, that would be helpful if you want to get started on your.
Would the department heads also know that that's a preliminary? Have they seen?
They know everything is
Okay.
preliminary at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
That's good enough for us.
Okay.
So what is the date that we have to, have our comments, et cetera, available?
For
For
the
this?
special town meeting?
No, for the annual town meeting. So if
Oh,
we're
I have a
getting
schedule. Do you
the-
want
getting
to,
the budget on the 17th.
here?
So happy you asked.
That's a good
Ready for the
segue.
pass?
I'm looking at my calendar
All
trying
right.
to figure out how many weeks do we have.
So, I
gonna be
was,
a tight
I was
budget,
doing this
no
today
question
before
about
I
it.
came over
We already
here.
talked about that.
And I do not have the meetings of February 1st and February 8th on this. This is really for the budget. I really tried to scope out the budget review, thinking that we wouldn't get the budget to the 17th. But I'm kind of thinking now that on the 7th, that maybe next week, that some of the budget message, revenue estimate, fund balance, and long-term plan information, if we could get some of that next week, that might help us. And then we could start with the budget reviews. And it was a little bit tight, but I felt that we could, I felt that it was kind of doable. And I might move some things up to the 17th. I wanted to send this out because what I'd like to have it is kind of a draft budget to send to the town administrator so he can send it to the department heads, because sometimes they have dates that they're not gonna be available. And so if they're not gonna be available, if they could let me know, or let you know so you can let me know, so we can shift things around. And then, this is just a kind of a draft, but it kind of just scoped out, would we be okay in doing this? And I have some blanks here.
I'm pretty sure DNR is not gonna be available that night.
Yeah, that's, yeah, we have to move, I had to, so, anyway, so, okay, so, given that, I mean, I don't need a formal vote, but if I just have consensus of the committee that everyone feels fine with getting the budget on the 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
Just looking at the calendar, my guess is we're going to have our written comments, because they like to have the report available 2 weeks prior to town meeting, which is April 18th. So we're probably gonna have to target April 8th to have our comments. So we usually have to have it a week before.
I didn't put on those dates of the, so let me get those from, get those.
Mostly I just want people to
Talk
be
to Nancy.
aware that, because we're looking at this stuff in March, we're gonna have to be ready to start.
So one
making
thing that might be good, last year, the Board of Selectmen kind of throughout the whole budget process was questioning different things. And a lot of budget changes were made at the very, very end of the process. And I think what they're really trying to do this year is get all those machinations of their fine tuning it, so that when we get the budget on the 17th of February, it should be pretty solid in terms of what their recommendation is for the budget, and then we're not gonna have to deal with those so many changes at the end. And I think that in that sense, it makes sense. And one of the other things that I've been thinking about, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but is when we changed the town meeting from the 3rd week in May to the 1st week in May, when we flip-flopped, I don't think we changed the budget process.
I wasn't around for that, so I don't.
No, yeah, I think you were, because I was around for it, I'm pretty sure. And so, and so I think our process has been
So
sort of
maybe they did that in the
a
05.
little bit of compressed in terms of,
Maybe they did that in the 05. I don't remember.
yeah, I mean, it was early. It
Yeah.
was, so anyway,
I don't remember.
so we'll work with this.
Mondays?
So some of these dates have like 2, like Monday, Wednesday, which
2
is
times a week we're
dependent
gonna
on, no.
We're
It's
going to get-
dependent if,
Yes,
we have
Judy.
2 things. If the community building, $18,000 is appropriated at the special town meeting, and the community building can be open again on Monday nights,
Right.
we can meet on Mondays.
Good.
The 17th would definitely be a Wednesday, because we can't meet that Monday. If the community building money is
I
not
got it, I got it.
appropriated, I have to make sure that the wiring is completed at the high school library, so that could be a live meeting, and
Right.
then that's their second
Okay.
choice for.
I expect if the town meeting approves the 18,000 or the budget for that, we would be able, that's the 8th of February, that we probably would be able to gear up the contractor, because it's gonna be a contract service, within 10 working days to get up and running.
So the following week is the 15th, which is a holiday, so it
Right.
wouldn't be that anyway, so it would be the 22nd
22nd.
of February.
Yeah,
So,
that would be my anticipation.
okay, so that would would be great. Okay. Future meetings, that kind of covers that. Warrant tracker. I had, just wanted to get some articles assigned so people know what they are going to be doing, and if I can find my warrant tracker in this pile of stuff. Oh, thank you. I had one with some notes on it, though, because George Slade said he would do the planning articles, right, George?
He doesn't have
That was the assumption.
He's saying yes, so.
Yes, yes, he already said that, so,
I'll do 8 and 9.
okay.
Take it for granted.
I'll do is the ambulance, I'll do the ambulance one,
Can I do the ambulance?
then?
Sure.
Yes, I like to do different stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. I have information if you need it from the capital outlay committee. I'll do the budget.
Good. Do the budget amendment.
Budget amendment. And so I have the CPC and the other things. So do I have some volunteers
I'll
for,
do the Civil War thing.
you okay?
I'll help you. No, I'm only kidding.
I'll do number 2.
Jackson Field.
Okay. I need a volunteer for open space, Aptucxet walkway.
I'll take that.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, and just to note, I will note this on the warrant tracker, that 7 is contingent on 5.
Correct.
Which we haven't discussed. So, would the budget message, could you give a brief budget message to the FinCom with the, sort of with the revenue, the fund balances, or whatever, the free cash, so that we have that, well, that we're gonna do it anyway, so if you could do that, some of that next week?
You don't want the whole thing, 'cause
We want as little
Give the
as,
highlights. You
Okay.
can pass out the document and say
just the
highlights.
facts, guys, just the facts.
yes, yes.
I mean, it will be in our budget books, it will be in our budget book, and, so if we can do that next week, I'm just trying to leave then less, or we can wait till the 17th if you want to do it as.
No,
Monday.
let me see.
I mean, I
where
think
we are.
really important next week is the free cash analysis, the
Right.
the fund balances and ambulance and waterways, so that we understand where we are with those. Because we're starting to use those, and I really want to keep track of where we
Yeah,
are.
I had Linda we'll get those to you. We did a run on the ambulance fund. We wanted to be sure, that we weren't.
Right, and I haven't been to town hall to get my town report yet. I'm thinking of getting a,
Are those out yet?
They just
they're
came.
out, yes, they,
Those are good.
I'm thinking I'm getting a large print version, so I don't have to get my mic.
Oh, you also have it up online. Well, it
Yeah,
will- it
even
will
that's,
not-
even, yeah, you
Yeah,
got,
well,
it's
you
good
can
for
always
Zoom,
blow it
but,
up,
yeah,
yeah.
it's, okay. Anything else, any public comment?
No.
Any comment? Or tracker?
Isn't, no.
I just was wondering, you said 8 and 9 we're gonna postpone
Till next week.
till next week. Would there
For
be any?
voting?
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to vote them now? If you
I'm
want
just
to
wondering
take
if
five.
there's any, there's
What are they?
no
It's
controversy. I
the
think-
single stream and the buying.
I just, because
yeah.
it was 9:15, and
I know, I
we,
saw
earlier
John,
you cursed us.
John and George
Judy,
were
'cause you said
here,
we were
and
gonna
I
be
don't know
a
if they were
short
staying
meeting.
just for that express purpose, and
Oh,
The poor
be
guy.
nice if we'd let them
Yeah,
know
well-
that
okay.
it was,
Do we want to vote those?
Sure.
I would think so. I mean, we've had a pretty,
Yeah, that's fine. I
All
mean,
right,
if
and I'll-
everyone's ready to
I'll
vote
move
on them.
approval of Article 8. How's
Second.
that?
Second, yeah, all in favor.
Okay. Second was John Redmond, right?
right.
Any discussion on Article 8? All in favor?
Aye.
Move approval of Article 9.
Second.
Second.
Kathleen, you can do it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I want my trash cans.
Big ones.
I have a couple old ones for
Yeah,
you.
no, I don't want those.
Okay, if that being it, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Right, that was long.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so next week on Monday, 7 o'clock.